The man who betrayed me after 7 years was about to lose everything he'd ever dreamed of. And I was the one holding the match. Let me tell you how this all started, because what my boss did to me while I was lying broken in a hospital bed, well, it would make your blood boil. But what I did to him in return, that's a story worth telling. My name is David, and I was a computer tech who graduated at the absolute worst possible time, right when the 2008 financial crisis hit. One day I had companies fighting over me, offering scholarships, promising careers. The next day, those promises evaporated like smoke. For years I bounced from one dead-end job to another, save some money, get fired, spend those savings just to survive. By my late 20s, I was desperate. The tech world had moved on without me, and I couldn't afford the classes to catch up. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to become a welder, just like my late father. Fate seemed to smile on me for once. A state-sponsored program let me train for free, and within days of graduating, not months like before, I had a job offer. From a man I'll call Rat Boss. Rat Boss ran a small field welding crew, traveling all over Europe. "I'll teach you real welding," he promised. "None of that schoolyard garbage." And you know what? For 6 incredible years, he was true to his word. Those first 6 years were like a dream I never wanted to wake up from. Yes, we worked dawn to dusk, 7 days a week. Yes, we were away from home for months at a time. But the adventure, the brotherhood, the sense that we were building something together. I remember one time when Rat Boss took out a high-interest loan just to pay our wages on time because an emergency had drained his account. He chose debt over asking us to wait 2 weeks. That's the kind of boss he was. That's the kind of man I thought he was. But then, everything changed in year 7. The original crew left, missing their families too much. Rat Boss stayed home too, making me foreman while he sent new workers my way. At first, it wasn't so bad. Different people, sure, but we got the jobs done. Then, the pandemic hit. When work resumed, everything was different. The quality of workers Rat Boss was sending me, let's just say, they were people he might have literally fished out of the sewers. Drunkards, thieves, drug addicts. People with nothing to lose and no pride in their work. As foreman, I still made sure every job got completed and signed off, but there were constant incidents, fights, arrests, property damage, and slowly, insidiously, things started going wrong with the money. Wages came late, travel expenses weren't reimbursed, and Rat Boss started doing what he called creative accounting with everyone's pay. The breaking point came at 3 a.m. on a night when I was supposed to drive the crew home the next morning. My phone rang. It was our customer. One of my workers had been arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct. He had no ID except his workplace card, so they called the customer to identify who was responsible for this animal, which meant they called me. I had to drag myself out of bed, drive to the police station, and face a furious customer who was ready to ban us from ever working for his company again. The humiliation was crushing. When I got home, I sat down with Rat Boss for what I thought would be an honest conversation. He apologized, sort of. He admitted he was having problems with his wife, who co-ran the business and was fighting with him about money. Here's the thing that would later haunt me. At that point, he owed me nearly a year's worth of travel expenses. When you're traveling at least 2,000 miles every month, that adds up to serious money. We're talking about enough to buy a car. "Just give me a little time," he pleaded. "My wife is blocking any major expenses right now. Stay on with me for a few months on minimum wage, just until I can put together a decent crew." The fool that I was, I agreed. After 7 years together, I trusted him. But I had one condition. I needed half the money he owed me by the end of September, because I was having major work done on my house. "That shouldn't be a problem," he assured me. This far in advance? Absolutely. If you're enjoying this story of betrayal and revenge, hit subscribe. We post new stories like this every single day. A couple months went by. I worked locally for minimum wage, doing simple jobs while Rat Boss supposedly got his act together. But even that minimum wage came in late. My suspicions were growing like a cancer. As September approached, I confronted him again about the money I needed for my house repairs. You have to understand, finding good contractors in my area requires months of advance booking and substantial deposits just to prove you're serious. Don't worry about it, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I've got the cash ready, half your travel expenses, just like we agreed. But as we parted ways that day, something in his expression made my blood run cold. The smile he gave me was the fakest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Pure plastic. I stared him down hard, the kind of look that even an idiot would recognize as meaning, I'm not playing games anymore. That fake smile melted off his face like wax. That weekend, he sent me a message about how he'd lined up a new crew and was going abroad to meet with potential customers, to get his foot back in the door for international work. Every alarm bell in my head started screaming. He was going to run. He was going to disappear right when my payment was due. After everything we'd been through together, after 7 years of trust and friendship, he was planning to screw me over. I made a decision right then. If the money didn't come on the due date, a 30-day resignation notice would be waiting for him when he got back, filed on the exact day he was supposed to pay. But fate had other plans. When you're as angry and distracted as I was, thinking about betrayal and broken promises, you're not as careful as you should be. That's how I ended up slipping on a ramp at work, just 1 week before his debt payment was due. I didn't just twist my ankle or pull a muscle. I completely destroyed my foot. We're talking about emergency surgery, 2 weeks minimum in the hospital, and 6 months before I could put proper weight on it again. Guess what happened to the money he promised? It never came. Big surprise, right? Not only that, even my regular wage didn't get wired that month. But it gets so much worse. While I was in the hospital, heavily medicated and barely conscious, the contractors showed up to do the work on my house. My mother, who had emergency authorization on my accounts, used my savings to pay for the work rather than cancel it, which meant I had almost nothing left. Don't worry, she told me. You'll still get sick leave payments. I wasn't so sure. See, here's how sick leave works in my country. For work-related injuries with recovery periods longer than a month, the employer only pays the first month directly. After that, the government funds the sick leave, but they wire the money to the employer, who's supposed to forward it to the employee. You can probably guess what happened next. Nothing. Not a single cent from Rat Boss since my accident. Here I was, broken, bedridden, unable to work, and the money that was rightfully mine, money the government was sending specifically for me, was being stolen by the man I'd trusted for 7 years. I ran out of money just as I had a final debt payment due. Banks were calling me weekly. The stress was eating me alive. I had to cash in a long-term investment, something that would have provided modest passive income for the rest of my life, just to pay my debts and survive while I recovered. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt something crystallize inside me. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was something colder, more focused. Revenge. He had lied to me, hidden from me, failed to pay what was owed, stolen money that the government had sent specifically for me. He had betrayed 7 years of friendship when I needed him most. And that's when I remembered something important. As his foreman, I had handled a lot of paperwork. Every decision, every purchase, every dirty little secret hidden away in the numbers. And I had kept copies of everything. But before I tell you what I did to destroy him, you need to understand what I was really taking away from Rat Boss. Because it wasn't just money. Rat Boss lived in a tiny apartment in our capital city with his wife and 2 children. And when I say tiny, I mean they literally had to climb over each other just to move around. It was like living in a sardine can. But he had a dream, a beautiful, impossible dream. He had bought a plot of land where he was slowly building his dream house. Over the course of those 7 years I'd known him, he'd built it brick by brick with his own hands, room by room. This wasn't just any house. A single room was going to be bigger than his entire current apartment. When we last spoke, he told me he was maybe 6 months away from moving his family in. 6 months away from the life he'd worked toward for years. That dream was about to become his nightmare. As soon as I could drag my recovering foot behind me while high on hardcore painkillers, I made my pilgrimage to every government agency that might have jurisdiction over Rat Boss's crimes. The Labor Inspectorate, the Tax Authority, Worker Safety Boards, Social Security fraud investigators. I had documentation for everything. Every labor law violation, every unpaid wage, every safety corner cut, every fraudulent claim. 7 years of evidence, organized and detailed. The caseworker at the Labor Inspectorate went wide-eyed as she flipped through my files. I'll never forget what she mumbled to herself. My God, he's broken half the labor laws in our country. Now, I live in what you might call a second world country. Our government can be slow and inefficient, but when it finally moves, it moves like an avalanche. And when it hit Rat Boss, the impact was like watching the meteor that killed the dinosaurs strike the earth in real time. His business accounts were frozen solid. He was barred from traveling abroad. Every business license he held was suspended. He was required to dismiss all current employees with full severance pay. Money he didn't have. Within weeks, he filed for bankruptcy. But the government doesn't care about bankruptcy when you owe fines for breaking labor laws. Those debts don't disappear. To pay the fines that totaled 30 times what he'd stolen from me, he was required to sell his dream house. The house he'd spent 7 years building with his own hands. The house that was 6 months away from completion. Gone. He was trapped now in that sardine can apartment, unable to work, unable to support his family, unable to pay basic bills while the legal proceedings ground forward at bureaucratic speed. For what he did to me, I was able to stay afloat, barely. But for what I did to him, he was finished. Broken. Reduced to utter destitution. That's when my phone rang. I won't repeat the exact dialogue because this story is long enough already, but picture this. A man who had once been my mentor, my friend, screaming curses at me through the phone, demanding to know how I could do this to him, calling me every name in the book. I let him finish. Then I spoke calmly. You lied to me about money after 7 years of friendship. You left me to rot in a hospital, penniless and broken. You stole money that the government sent specifically for me. You're a rat who betrayed someone who trusted you. I paused, letting that sink in. Never call me again. We're in a legal dispute now. Forward all communication through the Labor Inspectorate case office. And I hung up. I did file a claim in his bankruptcy proceedings. By the time all the government fines were paid, there was almost nothing left. I recovered exactly 1 month's worth of sick leave, no travel expenses, no back wages, nothing else. But you know what? I could live with that. Because he got back 10 times the grief he'd inflicted on me. Not an eye for an eye, or a tooth for a tooth. The whole face for an eye, the whole head for a tooth. I'm standing now, both literally and figuratively. My foot healed. My life moved forward. But Rat Boss? He's so deep in the hole that when he used to dream about his big house, now he dreams about maybe, someday, possibly crawling his way back up to rock bottom, just to start over. The house that was 6 months from completion when he betrayed me, someone else lives there now. Some other family gets to enjoy the dream he spent 7 years building. And every morning when he wakes up in that cramped apartment, climbing over his wife and children just to get to the bathroom, I hope he remembers the choice he made. I hope he remembers that he chose to steal from a friend lying broken in a hospital bed. I hope he remembers that actions have consequences. This story ended 2 years ago, and my anger has long since faded. I don't claim any moral high ground here. Maybe we were both villains in this story. Maybe I went too far. But here's the thing about betrayal. When someone breaks 7 years of trust to steal from you at your lowest moment, when they choose greed over loyalty, when they prove that your friendship meant nothing to them, well, they shouldn't be surprised when that choice comes back to destroy everything they've ever worked for. Rat Boss made his bed. Now he gets to lie in it, in that tiny, cramped apartment, forever.